Coming up on Tech News Weekly, I, Mikah Sargent, am joined by Aunt Pruitt, and we have got an interesting show. Up first, Jeremy Burge of Emojipedia joins us to talk about the new emoji candidates for this coming year. Plus, we talk about emoji use being at an all-time high and kind of break into some of the emoji that are there. And I learned that if you do this, it kind of looks like a tiny heart if you look at it just the right way. We also talked to Mary Jo Foley of allaboutmicrosoft.com about Windows 365 and Cloud PC, a very interesting story about taking Windows to the cloud. Then our stories of the week, I talk about Twitter getting rid of fleets and how that is a good idea and whether there's some bad to it as well. And we round things out with Ant's story of the week about Netflix getting into the game streaming service area, plus more on game streaming. And there's a lot to check out, so stay tuned for this episode of Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 192, recorded Thursday, July 15th, 2021.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Endava. Subscribe and listen to Tech Reimagined, the podcast from Endava, from wherever you get your podcasts.
And also by IT Pro TV. CompTIA A+ is the key to your IT career, and as the official video training partner of CompTIA, IT Pro TV will help you get certified. Visit itpro.tv/TNW for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use code TNW30 at checkout.
Well, hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly. Wow.
What the heck is going on
I
here?
don't know. We're back in the studio. It took a little bit of dusting. We had to, brush off the cobwebs, clear out the gremlins that had moved in.
I gotta tell you, this is the only thing that looks familiar is this microphone.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Hi, I know you. The family of squirrels that had moved into my office, all of those have been cleared out now, and we're here back in the I think a squirrel just bit my foot, but we're getting it ironed out as much as we can.
We'll save him for dinner.
I am Mikah Sargent, and Jason Howell isn't here with us today, but somebody else is.
I am Aunt Pruitt. How y'all doing?
I know I'm doing well. It's nice to be back in the studio, nice to be seeing everybody, and to have Masako in the background recording us once again. It's been a while. For some reason, she didn't show up at the house all the time to record. Don't know what that was all about. But a return to some level of normalcy is nice.
Yeah, this has been quite nice. I've been coming in doing some TDing for a couple shows here at the network, but it's nice to be able to walk in here and see a lot of smiling faces of my colleagues, and we're just getting in here, getting this beautiful work done.
Yes, and we've got some beautiful work today. There's been a lot of chatter, I think kind of as there always is, around the time when new pictures hit our phones, or we're looking at what new pictures we'll be able to use coming up. I'm, of course, talking about emoji, and there has been some news to check out. So who but the one and only Jeremy Burge to join us to talk about emoji. Welcome back to the show, Jeremy.
I feel very privileged to be here in your first studio setback. Welcome to my home.
Well, thank you. Of course, for folks who don't know, Jeremy is coming to us from a houseboat, which is super cool. That is not a Skype background. That is indeed his boat. Very neat. So let's get into things. Emoji are... So you've got a lot that you shared with us about emoji, but I actually want to kind of talk about one of the stories that I saw you, or I think it might have been Emojipedia, tweet about, which was about emoji use being at an all-time high. Which is kind of wild to me because I always thought that emoji use was always at an all-time high. So for it to even be going up more is interesting. Can you talk about the fact that what you're seeing and how you kind of came to this discovery?
So emoji use is So far, as best as we can tell, always going up. Every year it's consistently gone up from when we first started monitoring it on Twitter 10 years ago now, and it has been increasing gradually, bit by bit. So what we're talking about now is about 1 in 5 tweets have an emoji in it, which is a useful platform to check, right? Because we can't tell what we're sending privately to each other. And surveys of people, well, you don't always tell the truth in a survey. So that's what we have there to know that emoji use is at an all-time high, which makes sense why there might be new emojis coming out every year then.
Yeah. And whenever the process of choosing what new emoji happen, it is based on use. It's based on the forms that go into deciding what new emoji get chosen. But I think this is interesting because, you're talking about the public way of looking at what new emoji are coming or what emoji are being used versus a private way, and using the social media streams that are available. That all is fascinating to see kind of how that shapes emoji use. But I'm curious, given each platform's continued focus on emoji of always, creating the icons for new emoji and for, Facebook or Microsoft coming out with new emoji. Clearly that points to the fact that people are interested in using them, right? I mean, that's kind of how we look at what's not available. The data that's not available to everybody, as you said, the private data, we might not have that, but we know people must be using them because you've got all of these companies focusing their resources on emoji.
You do, and they do their own individual research. I think they're just reluctant to maybe talk about it too much because you might be a bit confused about exactly what they're collecting off you if companies start to talk all the time about, Mikah loves to use this emoji, so... but they know, they also have an idea of what's going on. And it's very clear, I think, from private and public platforms that hearts are very popular. There's smileys. And then I guess you get into the complicated issue of greater representation for different objects and different interests and all kinds of things there where they're not always used as much, but there's some choices to be made there. So you can see on screen, this is a graph here of 10 years of emoji use on Twitter, and that's
wow.
I mean, it's flattening off a bit there, but that's 10 years going up and up, and we'll see, right? Maybe in a year's time we find this was the peak, or maybe it was just the beginning.
Yeah, wow. It'll be interesting to see what happens next. So then let's talk about some of the recent changes. For example, Microsoft, who has announced a new design for its emoji. It was interesting. The other day, I was, actually just yesterday, I was hosting Windows Weekly, and I had started to write a tweet. And on my Mac, I hold down Control Command, and then I hit the space bar, and that brings up the emoji keyboard. And then I'm able to insert emoji. On Windows, I had no idea how to bring up the emoji picker, so I had to do a search for it. But when I did...
Windows period.
There you go. It's Windows period. Windows key period. And I brought up these emojis, and I'm like, oh, these are kind of fun and different. And I like the current design of Windows emoji, but they're redoing them, and now they kind of I almost want to make little treats of these emoji icons. They're so cool looking with this new 3D design.
Yeah, they're hyper detailed. They're effectively sort of 3D little clay models is what they look like. And what's happened here over the years is the existing Windows emoji set, it was designed around the time of Metro, don't call it Metro Windows design, this sort of very hard, flat interface that is Microsoft's moving on from it, right? They've picked this whole fluent design, and you can see there the thick outlines. They look great in context of Windows as it stands today, but I see a lot of feedback where a lot of people complain about them, to be honest, because they want them to look closer to other platforms, and they see it on Windows and it looks nothing like their Mac or Android phone. And even though as a standalone object, they work very well, I see a lot of people just want them to be more like other platforms. And every other platform has only been going more towards detailed, glossy, realistic design. So this is a cute compromise, I think.
As an aside, of course, the Unicode Consortium is the group responsible, specifically the emoji subcommittee, responsible for the introduction of new emoji and choosing which ones make it into Unicode. We know, I know, Apple and Google have folks that are part of that subcommittee. Does Microsoft have somebody that works on that subcommittee as well?
Every company has people that come and go that are sort of part of the subcommittee. It's one of these things, right, where it sounds like it's just one group that meets all the time, but different people are involved in different levels with email or face-to-face in the past or over the internet. Every company does have a say. Microsoft has a say, so does Apple, Google. All the companies are involved. And I guess the most important part as well is that the emoji subcommittee, they make a recommendation of which emojis to approve, but then there is another committee above them that actually make the final call. And every member company has a vote on that committee as well.
That's an important point. And in fact, I was hoping, as I always try to do, a long time ago, I wrote this whole thing about how emoji are requested to be included and that whole process and who is actually in charge of deciding what emoji make it. And in doing that, you come across all the folks who reach out to Apple or Google or Microsoft or Twitter and say, you should bring this emoji to the platform. And I think it's important that we continue to educate folks who do care about this, where emoji come from, like what group is responsible for it. So before we get into the new emoji that could come in 2021 and 2022, can you explain just a little bit, as much as you can in summary, kind of what Unicode is and what their role is and how that differs from what Apple is doing and Google is doing on their own when it comes to emoji?
Right. So in a general sense, you're right. If someone wants a new emoji to exist, if you look at your keyboard and think, this is appalling that the emoji that I want should exist, the best and most efficient way to get that to happen is to write a proposal to Unicode, who are the body that effectively decide and vote on every character on the keyboard, whether it's a text character or an emoji. The reason for that is that all the tech companies are members of Unicode. So by doing that, you're taking it straight to the tech companies, but via a channel where it's likely to get in front of somebody. And there is an aspect to emoji where you want them to work in a compatible way. If Apple wanted to do an emoji that Google didn't want to do, it's less likely to get up because they're not helpful if they don't work on different platforms. So while you can submit feedback to Apple or Google and say, I really want this, and they might keep it in their mind, it might get to the right people to vote at Unicode, but your best bet, especially if you think it is a realistic candidate, is to Google the proposal form for Unicode, just Google how to submit a Unicode emoji proposal, and hopefully it fits the criteria, and that is your best way to get it standardized on all platforms.
Yeah. Definitely makes sense. Okay, so let's then talk about the new emoji that are on the draft candidates list. What is the next emoji version that'll come out?
So the 14.0 comes out. It gets approved in September. When it hits phones, is up to the company. So
right.
14.0 is the next emoji update.
And then let me do a clarification point here. Each company is responsible for its own design for emoji, correct? It is not the Unicode body that makes the actual artwork that ends up on people's devices. It is the responsibility of these individual companies to choose how that design is rendered, but it's based on a description of that design. And I'm sure, of course, conversations between the companies, correct?
That's right. That's exactly right. The one thing to point out is that in the past, they varied a lot more in the past. I don't think there was as much discussion between the companies that you'd say, you're going to have a new emoji and it's going to be a cup of coffee or something. And every different company might have a different colored cup. It might face a different direction. They were being designed in silos. Whereas these days, they are still individual to each company, but we're seeing more and more the key decisions are closer to each other. They tend to all face the same direction. As an example, that's quite an important one. If I'm going to put my hand to one side, that it points the same way on all platforms is helpful. And we're seeing more of that But as you alluded to before, things like Microsoft and Apple, they're quite different design styles, so they can make their own choice. What does a melting face look like, which is one of the new emojis? Or when you say face with one eye peeking through the fingers, that's clear, and but exactly what expression is on the face. And you do want them to look quite similar, but there's a bit of leeway there for what each company decides to do.
So let's then talk about the new ones. We've got an image from the Emojipedia blog that shows the draft candidates. Any of these in particular getting more buzz than the other? I know I was immediately drawn to these new lips that are, that's perhaps the most suggestive emoji I've ever seen versus some of the other ones that are a little bit more subtle. That one feels rather forward. But any of these getting buzz?
I think so. Yeah, you're right. That is one. I'm seeing a lot of tweets about Lin-Manuel Miranda liking to bite his lip suggestively like this. You see, the smileys are always popular, because people can say, this is me. The melting face in particular, I mentioned that before. People do love a versatile emoji. It could be a hot face. It could just be I'm kind of losing my mind over here, or, it has this sort of bizarre look to it. And then you get a lot of the objects which are popular in their own groups. There's a life ring there. Maybe I like it because I'm on a boat, whereas someone else might like, the troll because they're particularly interested there. But I guess longer term, though, we see the heart hands. That's definitely going to be quite popular. It's less buzz because everyone just likes it. There's no controversy. There's no decision. Everyone just goes, yeah, heart hands. I love it. And then you have the one that I'm a bit too old to use, and the K-pop sort of little heart fingers there.
Oh, is that what that's for? I had no idea what that meant.
You could use it for money as well. It's Unicode doesn't tell you how to use it, right? But there's the proposal behind it suggested K-pop little finger heart that BTS fans and
that's a heart
like to use. That's a little heart, right there, tiny little heart. And or as I say, you could use it as a gesture to do the same thing.
Interesting. And also the Uncle Sam, I want you. Pointing finger. When I saw that one, it actually made me a little uncomfortable. I have to be honest. I was like, "Oh my God, it's pointing at me." That's I feel pressured. All right.
Yeah, emojis don't do that. They're getting in your face now.
Yeah, they're breaking the fourth wall. That's what it is. That's why it freaked me out. I'm like, I'm not used to this.
No, but only left or right.
Ant, why don't you round us out with the question you had?
You brought up some interesting points here as you talked about some being uncomfortable when you see them, and then some are just flat out confusing, because I got to tell you, that does not look like a heart to me. How does someone get that to be
tiny
heart? But I wanted to ask you about the social aspect of emojis, because I noticed with these new ones that are proposed, you see a lot of brown skin versus Caucasian skin intermingled here. Has there been a bit of a push to try to make emojis a little bit more friendly and a little bit more positively recognized today? Because just recently with Euro 2020, emojis were used and it was a bit harsh from the racial standpoint. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, there's a lot going on with emoji, because you can send them to anyone. You can, the Euros, you mentioned that we've got an issue where over time people can use an existing emoji and people use them offensively sometimes. The monkey emoji was sent to several black football players in the England team, and that's awful. That's outrageous behavior, that these social media platforms struggle to keep up sometimes with this sort of thing, that this emoji's fine. You can send a monkey to someone to talk about, seeing it in the wild there or at the zoo. So, that's a difficult issue.
It's very easy to say that emojis are all about context, but it's also very easy to say I didn't quite get the context. And I think that's just been a big disconnect for someone like me using emojis, because I'm already misunderstood just in general day-to-day conversation, and I start to throw in these hieroglyphics or emojis, people are really not going to understand me. Is it just an age thing for someone like me? Because I just don't do it. I mean, I'm in my 40s and I don't know anybody that really uses emojis. I know my awesome co-host here, Mr. Sargent, uses them, but he's just a touch younger than I am, and he's a little bit more cool and hip.
I don't know what you're talking about.
A little bit more cool and hip, so it makes sense that
I'm
he's using
ancient
things to me. But what are your thoughts on that? Is it definitely a generational thing when it comes to emoji use?
It's hard to pin down, but a few anecdotal looks at this sort of thing. Again, this is quite survey-based sometimes, tends to find more literal emoji use in older age groups where you're just using it to be practical. You're using the thumbs up or a tick just to get the job done, right? You mentioned representation before, things like the handshake with different skin tones. I mean, that's a great symbol to have on the keyboard. A lot of studies have shown that the yellow emoji is meant to be neutral, but it's not for all people, right? So having different skin tones available there will make some people feel far more comfortable that sending a black hand shaking someone's hand might suit their audience. And then as for the rest of the set, it is down to context. You know, you and your friends might not use them, or you might not use the same ones, but other friendship groups will come up with their own meanings for some, or they will do what a lot of politicians and PR teams do, is look it up on Emojipedia to check how they're using it before they send it, because they want to make sure they haven't messed it up.
So note to self, bookmark Emojipedia, Ant. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jeremy Burge, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to talk about emoji. I wish that we could, just exclusively, I could sort of say emoji out loud and then you would say them back, and that's how we would communicate. But then I feel like Ant would be a little bit left out there. So that's why we're not doing that today.
Jeez,
So, of course, people can head to emojipedia.org to check out all the awesome stuff you are always keeping track of, and head to the blog to be able to understand kind of what's going on in the world there. But if folks want to follow you online and check out all your great work, how and where do they go to do that?
Best place, follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Burge, or you can come follow my boat travels on TikTok at Burgelicious, which is a bit of a mouthful, but you can Google it. You'll find me on there cruising around the canals. Awesome.
I follow you on TikTok, and it's fun to see the boat stuff you're up to. All right. Up next, Microsoft made an interesting announcement at its Inspire conference, and it's all about the cloud. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Endava, and Season 2 of Endava's podcast, Tech Reimagined, is out now. Tech Reimagined brings together leading tech personalities and industry experts such as Guy Kawasaki, Mary Williams, Alex Hunter, Brian McBride, Tom Gruber, Dave Copeland, Inma Martinez, Viola Llewellyn, and more. Yes, lots of interesting folks. The podcast discusses the big questions around technology and its industries. Guests and hosts will be talking about how these trends impact our everyday lives and how our relationship with technology is constantly reimagined. So that's where the title comes into play. Check out the episodes Insurance Reimagined Parts 1 and 2, where guests Anne Norclett and Kevin Crawford discuss the role IT plays in the insurance industry. Or the 2 episodes about the role of AI reimagined. Boris Sergol and Radu Orgadan talk about the regulations, accountability, and expectations that arise when using AI to solve complex problems. They discuss what the future holds for this technology and for the individuals who are using it on a daily basis. Interested in shopping? Well, catch parts 1 and 2 of Our Shopping Experience Reimagined with guests Thomas Beechin and Jeremy Mays, where they dive into some of the most significant shifts they've seen in consumer behavior over the last 12 months, including the increasing popularity of direct-to-consumer and buy online, pick up in store, and how the shift to digital is pushing people and companies to reimagine the way we shop. Endava has been reimagining the relationship between technology and people. Tech Reimagined explores this relationship on a deeper level with a look at the most recent experiences with technology and its experts. Learn more about how tech is becoming so much more in this world that is constantly growing and changing. It's a podcast you don't want to miss. Subscribe and listen to Tech Reimagined, the podcast from Endava, from wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much to Endava for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. It is time for the cloud.
Oh boy. So last time I was here on Tech News Weekly, I was able to dive into a Microsoft story dealing with Windows 11. And Yes, that's what we're going to talk about again today, Windows 11. But this is a little bit different. This one caught me off guard. I didn't really see this coming. We know Microsoft to be quite prominent in the cloud space with all of its Azure technology, but there's something different out there now, and it's for Windows in the cloud, Windows in the cloud, not Office 65. Well, we have Miss Mary Jo Foley of AboutMicrosoft.com, ZDNet, to join us to give us a little bit more insight about this, because this threw me for a loop a little bit. So, Miss Mary Jo, how you be?
Hey guys. Doing my little heart, my BTS heart.
What the heck? That is not a heart.
If you squint, you can kind of see it.
That is, I am holding up a tiny little succulent petal or something. That's what that is. That's what that is. Miss Mary Jo, so Microsoft has announced some more interesting and exciting products here. And I got to tell you, I was a little bit confused by this, but I'm sure you can break this down for me. What exactly is going on with having access to Windows in the cloud versus having Office 365?
Right. So this is all about virtualization and streaming. First I should say, this is not a service for everybody, right? Most people, like you're talking about, are going to be very happy with just their Office apps delivered through the cloud. But if you're somebody who needs your whole desktop, your actual Windows itself, with all its settings, its background image, all the tools, and all the apps that you run on your Windows desktop from Microsoft and not from Microsoft, and you want it delivered through the cloud in a virtual way, you're going to want this new thing, which is called Windows 365. And on the back end of it, it's called Cloud PC. And that was kind of like the working code name that we had for this thing.
So this is not just the average consumer that's wanting to run Windows at home. This is more so for an enterprise setup or developers, or
definitely mostly for businesses. Microsoft's targeting it at SMBs, small, mid-sized businesses, and enterprise customers, but also developers too. If you're a software developer, an engineer, or content creator, and you might want to run things this way, that you also could be a good candidate for this, but not home users at this point. Maybe someday for consumers and home, but not right now.
Okay, so if it's not for home users, what about those home users that are wanting to get off of Windows 10, but allegedly can't get off of Windows 10 because they don't have the proper chipset? Is this something that they could dive into?
I saw people speculating that on Twitter yesterday, saying, okay, if I can't run Windows 11 on my existing laptop, maybe I'll just subscribe to Windows 365 and run it that way. You probably could, but given the little leak we had this morning about the pricing, you may not want to.
Wait a minute, there was a leak this morning?
Yeah.
It didn't take news go so dadgum fast.
It does. Yeah, so Microsoft, yesterday they said, we're not going to tell you the pricing until August 2nd, which is the day it becomes generally available. But of course, pricing is going to leak. And somebody was at a session at the Microsoft Inspire Partner Show yesterday, and they did a quick little screen grab, and we saw that one of the SKUs that they're going to come out with is $31 per user per month to run Windows 365. So it's not cheap, right?
Wow.
I mean, it gives you advantages in certain scenarios, but that's not even the most expensive SKU. There's going to be many more that are more expensive than that. So you have to have a real reason or a set of reasons to want to do this virtually. Otherwise, I would say go buy a new laptop if yours won't run Windows 11.
When I was looking at your article on ZDNet, I noticed that it had a lot of different packages, if you will, as far as configurations, because if you wanted to get into a Windows box, you wanted to have a certain amount of hardware specifications, so many cores, so much RAM, and so forth. Can you dive into that a little bit for us?
Sure. So Microsoft's, even though they're not giving us all the pricing, they're kind of indicating, here's how we're thinking about dividing it up by cloud sizes and by customer types. So for people who are like first-line workers, people who work in call centers or in a fast food restaurant who need to access their Windows desktop, you don't need a high-end one. You could go with like one core, 2 gigs of storage, 2 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage, right? You could come in at the lowest end. But if you're somebody who's a software developer or a designer, like say you want to run Adobe in the cloud on your Windows desktop, you're going to want the highest end one probably. So 8 cores, 32 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage. So the way to think about this is if Microsoft had a data center full of PCs that could run your desktop and stream it back to you, that's what this is.
Okay. Now
you can kind of pick and choose and go between plans. Like say you've got a lot of demands for a project that you're working on for like a week or two, and then you don't need all that storage and all that compute, you can scale back down to a lower plan.
Okay, so I know you're quite familiar with the enterprise standpoint of Microsoft in Windows.
Mary Jo loves enterprise and has different feelings about consumers.
Yeah, me and consumers, we're not really friends.
But again, the thing about the enterprise is everything moves really, really slow. So if we're going to have Windows 11 in the enterprise standpoint, is this a scenario where we start to see a lot more dumb terminals in different workstations where they can just go ahead and access Windows through the cloud?
Yeah, so I was talking about that on Windows Weekly yesterday. I said, so this is thin client all over again. And people in the Discord chat room were like, oh, God, she's talking about thin clients.
Yeah,
no,
don't
right?
want it.
But, in theory, I would think this could mean that you could buy a less powerful machine. I mean, you technically could run Windows 365 on an iPhone or an Android, maybe not an iPhone, an iPad or an Android phone, and not have all the compute power, but still access all these apps and services on these devices. So, yeah, in a way, it is thin client, right? I mean, even if people don't want to hear we're going back to thin client, that's kind of what we're talking about in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
so let's look at it from a device management standpoint in the world of Active Directory. I guess this makes things so much easier for those infrastructure managers and end user computing managers on the enterprise because everything is right there in the cloud and they're going through a particular dashboard to do their pushes and things of that nature.
Correct. Yes. So you're going to have 2 ways to do this. If you're like an SMB and you don't have a giant IT department, it might just be you. You can have settings that they call self-serve where Microsoft will actually do a lot of the management of like the diagnostics and pushing out alerts and that kind of thing. But if you're somebody who has a larger IT department and you want to be in charge, you can use the same tools like Endpoint Manager, for example, or Intune, those kind of things, to manage both your regular Windows desktops inside your company and these virtual desktops. So you don't need to have a whole different set of things going on. It could be looking at all your desktops, whether they're on premises or in the cloud, in a consistent way in a single pane of glass. That's the promise.
Okay, I know you're not necessarily fond of the consumer space, but what about what about gamers? What about gamers? You think this would be a good play because you're being able to
their
deal
own
with
world.
Azure and
get the Xbox out of this, right? We got Xbox Game Pass.
All right.
We got Xbox.
Note taken.
Xbox Game Pass has their own thing. They even have the cloud streaming plan, right, for the Xbox. And here's a little interesting piece of trivia. The guy who's running this and is the head engineer of Windows 365, he got his start building a game service for streaming games at Microsoft that was codenamed Arcadia. So this guy saw how good this worked for games, and he's like, why can't we do this for the enterprise? So you're not far off in thinking there are a lot of synergies and similarities, but we got to keep your Xbox out of my enterprise.
This is not the chocolate and peanut butter situation where you want them to combine.
No, clearly not.
Like, you go over there, I'm here.
Clearly not. Yeah.
No, but Ant, you're thinking about this correctly. Like the way you're framing these questions and thinking about this is how they're pitching it. They're pitching it as a security play, an easier management play. I mean, they already have a virtualization service at Microsoft that used to be called Windows Virtual Desktop, now called Azure Virtual Desktop. That's the new name for it. But you have to kind of be a rocket scientist a little bit to run that thing, and you have to really know what you're doing because Microsoft charges you for how much you're consuming of Azure, all the compute you're consuming, the storage, the networking, right? Sorry if you guys are hearing some loud noise here.
Are they doing that stuff to your bricks again?
Yeah, they are. He's out here
goodness.
power washing my window. Again, how many times can you power wash one window?
I don't know.
Well, it is Miss Mary Jo Foley, so they want it to sparkle and shine.
That's definitely. Yeah.
I'm like, is he really doing this again? Okay. But yeah, so if you're a bigger enterprise, you probably are happy doing this with Azure Virtual Desktop.
All right.
But if you want it
'Cause you have the
packaged in a way...
resources.
Exactly. But if you want it packaged up in a way where you have a flat rate per user per month, and you don't have to like think about, oh, how much storage do I need to add for the holiday season or this or that, then you might want to go with Windows 365 and Cloud PC.
Okay, so with all of that being said, as in being sold as something super easy, much simpler to manage and so forth, how soon do you see folks adopting this? Because just the regular desktop on-premises Windows 11 in the enterprise space, it's not going to happen until next year because of all of the in-house applications and in-house configurations that need to be done. Security, because IT managers never trust anything in the first version.
No.
So how soon do you see this being adopted? Is this something, even though they're announcing it for August of this year, do you think we'll start seeing it being used by Q4?
So I'll tell you a couple things on that. They've been testing this privately with companies of all different types and sizes for months. And the way I know that is I knew what the code name was, Deschutes, just like the beer. If you typed in deschutes.microsoft.com, it would come up and say, you don't have a cloud PC subscription. So I'm like, yeah, a lot of companies have been test driving this already and are ready to roll with it. Like they already have been kicking the tires for a while. But then, Microsoft said yesterday, we feel so certain that the apps and services you are already running on your desktop will run well when we launch this, that we're just going to tell you everything's going to run. And if it doesn't, we have this program called App Assure where you contact us and we will work with you until it runs. Like we will make it run as part of a free service.
Wow.
So that's how confident they feel about this being a good experience, performance-wise and compatibility-wise for the enterprise.
Wow. Now, you do know there's a thin line between confidence and cocky.
I think
right?
you mean a thin client. A thin client
That
between
is
confidence.
true.
Wow.
I know. A lot of people are worried about the performance. Like a lot of people yesterday were saying, well, what about the latency factor, right? Like,
Yes, that's exactly it.
Right? You can run Teams like virtually, but it already is kind of a big,
There's already a
clunky
lag
thing,
there.
right? Yeah. I know. So I'm very curious to see the performance levels of things like Teams and also things like Adobe Creative Cloud kind of stuff and the Adobe apps. Even something really huge like AutoCAD. Like, is it really going to work in the cloud like it does locally? Right?
Oh boy, and it's already challenging locally. Good
Right.
grief.
Right.
Goodness.
Yep.
Well, Miss Mary Jo, this has been a great conversation and discussion, even though we did not even talk about beer this time.
Just a quick mention of Deschutes. That's it.
There you go.
Deschutes.
She did get it in there, didn't she?
She had to throw it
I
in.
did.
I respect that
I always
so much.
I always work in the beer pick.
Ms. Mary Jo, where can we find more of your musings and writings and stuff all online?
It's very easy. Allaboutmicrosoft.com. That's me.
All right.
And on Twitter, at Mary Jo Foley, if you're a Twitter person.
I am.
Yep.
And everybody else should be too, dadgummit. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Miss Mary Jo. I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Nice seeing you again.
Bye.
Likewise.
Nice to see you.
All right. So that was, I don't know. Again, I think Microsoft might be coming off just a bit cocky with some of those statements, but we shall see.
We'll see.
But anyway, up next, Mr. Sargent has a story about big tech killing off another one of its products. And no, it's not Google. But first, I'd like to take a moment and tell you about another great sponsor of Tech News Weekly, and that is the folks at IT Pro TV. If you're trying to build an IT career, you need to get CompTIA A+ certified. It will expand your horizons, whether it's location, pay, or employer. Lucky for you, IT Pro TV is the official video training partner for CompTIA. So not only will you get certs you need, you'll enjoy learning along the way. IT Pro TV is the best online source for IT education, whether you're an organization or an individual interested in starting and expanding your IT skills. They're edutainers. Yes, they make it fun. Make learning IT actually interesting and fun. They provide you the most up-to-date information while preparing you for the exams that give you the certs employers are truly looking for in their IT employees. So guess what now? July is a great month because IT Pro TV is having CompTIA month. IT Pro TV will be featuring 2 CompTIA-themed webinars. The TechNado podcast with Don Pizzette, he'll be welcoming 2 CompTIA guests. And throughout the month of July, they'll be giving away CompTIA exam vouchers. On Friday, July 30th at 2 p.m., IT Pro TV will be playing CompTIA Jeopardy live. Ooh, that's going to be fun and smart. You don't want to miss that. IT Pro TV's 7 studios and over 5,800 hours of IT training creates the perfect environment for you to learn IT, and they're always adding new content. So go further and get certified in Apple and security skills and Python and Cisco and so many more. IT Pro TV also makes it easy to get a good IT education because you can do it anytime from the comfort of your own home or on your own schedule. IT Pro TV's courses are live and on demand worldwide via Chromecast, Roku, Apple TV, PC, or their iOS and Android apps. One IT professional said, quote, "This site has helped me with 2 certifications and also as a supplemental material for my grad school classes. Give it a try. You won't be disappointed." End quote. Oh, that's awesome. So go to itpro.tv/TNW and use code TNW30 to receive 30% off all of consumer subscriptions. That's itpro.tv/TNW and use code TNW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV. Build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. And we thank IT Pro TV for their support of Tech News Weekly.
Nice. All right, folks, it's my story of the week, and I am talking about Twitter this time and its fleets feature. So, of course, insert all of the fleets puns here.
I'm not clever enough for those. Sorry.
Well, yeah, we'll move on. Those, I have to say, they're not very clever. They're very obvious. So we're moving on from those. Twitter has made the decision to shut down fleets, I think, only a month or so. It's been a couple of months.
It's been a couple of months.
Yeah.
I think maybe.
Oh, yeah, it was 8 months ago, I guess.
It's been that long?
Yeah, I thought, it feels like it's not been that long. 8 months ago, Twitter launched Fleets, and you can tell that we haven't really used it that much because we didn't even remember when it started. But Twitter's Fleets was this way to have ephemeral, visual messaging available on the platform. And I think this is part of what's interesting about this is in reading some of the responses or some of the messaging from Twitter's own people, the design folks and the engineering folks who were talking about this, I never put 2 and 2 together that they were looking for a way to share visually on Twitter. That's what this was for. So I always saw it as, it was attempting to be what Snapchat does, what Instagram does, what these other platforms do. And it was less, in my mind, about what it was trying to do, which was give good ways to share visual content on Twitter. And so they're talking about looking at new ways to share visual content on Twitter in a different way because they've decided that folks just aren't using this enough to keep it around to use it. And I'm not surprised based on what I've seen in terms of usage of the platform. First, obviously, I want to ask, did you ever use Fleets? Did you give it a go? Did you try to did you give it a concerted effort or did you just, want to check it out? Tell me about your experience.
I did not give it the biggest effort, I promise you. I knew it was there, and I sort of begrudgingly posted a few things here and there, but while I was using it, I just didn't feel comfortable with it. I didn't think it was a good fit for the type of content that I particularly like to share on Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, I get the idea of being more visual on it, but you said you don't necessarily see that. What do you mean?
So I didn't realize is what I mean. The messaging that Twitter gave when it first released this product, I don't think properly communicated that that's what they were doing. Instead, it just felt like we're trying to reach parity with other social media networks. Of course,
that's what it felt like.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a part of it for sure. But in seeing what Twitter has created and is continuing to work on and what improvements have been made over the past year or so, now I see that this was part of a larger effort to improve its ability, one's ability to communicate visually on the platform, because they recently redid their image handling system so that you can upload higher quality images. There's the ability to load images at 4K quality. There are some new adjustments to how images are cropped or not cropped.
Yep.
And then, of course, Twitter has, which I never use, its own, within the app, it has its own kind of image sharing option. And so instead of just attaching a photo, if you add a photo using the Twitter app itself, then it has its own features.
Yep.
So all of that kind of comes together to see that this was something that they've been working on and that Fleets was a part of that. But in seeing it as it was, and in the way that I felt they communicated it, to me, it was just another Snapchat or Instagram thing. And I personally I don't use those. And, I occasionally look at other people's and that's fine.
You don't?
No, I'm not a story person. I lead a very boring life, and I don't want or need people to see into that very boring life. And I think also...
Outstanding. Yeah.
I think also for me, it's like I already share enough of myself. I give enough of myself publicly in the ways that I do, and so I need some level of separation from the world. So
you don't hear that take very often these days, and I really appreciate you saying that, because everything is, in my opinion, there's a lot of oversharing when it comes to any of these social media platforms, and then having those quick stories, whether it's Instagram or Fleets. The people sharing it out there, knowing that it's only going to be there for a limited amount of time, so they don't really have a lot of anxiety about stuff just hanging out there. I'm with you. I will use, I attempted to use Fleets to be more of a visual, behind the scenes look of things going on in my life, because I admit my life outside of work is pretty daggum boring to most people, so I don't really have much to share, other than a little tiny dog trying to fight and play with a really large dog in the house. That's about it. But that gets old because they're not cats. And we all know cats rule the internet.
For some reason that I'll never understand.
But I did give Fleets a try. It just didn't quite feel right. And I stopped using it for a little while, and I just published something maybe 3 days ago to Fleets. And then this news drops. Well,
use of Fleets has drastically and dramatically increased since the announcement that it was being, shuttered, as is the old verb for closing down a service. And that's kind of been interesting. But I did see an interesting take. We were talking about oversharing or sharing things that, because it's ephemeral, you feel a little bit more comfortable about. I saw some folks talking about how in the NSFW, the not safe for work area of Twitter, that Fleets were actually far more popular, which doesn't surprise me given the ephemeral nature of it. But I don't think that Twitter wants to be that company that sort of creates a service that's just used for that. Any social media company is looking for features that are going to increase engagement and use of the platform, and weigh that against the resources that are being put into it. And you have to think about all of the data that's constantly being poured into Twitter. It's honestly a surprise to me that they are paying attention to visual sharing, given how much more of a load that puts on the company, as images and video are far more heavy than text is. And so I think that if they're looking at ways to make this work, and they go, okay, we have this much money and resources to pour into it. And we've got this thing where these photos and videos are shared temporarily, and it's taking up this much space on our whole network, and we're weighing that against things that people have wanted for a long time, which is improved image quality and improved video quality, et cetera. Let's maybe take those resources and apply them there. Because if there's one complaint I see so often, people will, if they're anytime someone posts an image or something on Twitter, particularly like vector images or high quality photos, they're always talking, Twitter crushed it, Twitter ruined it, Twitter this, Twitter that. So they'll share a link to an external site.
Yep.
Twitter people see that and they want to fix that, and they want to make it so that they don't have crush those images. But we don't want to return to fail whale, the fail whale era. So it's all a balance. And I think if getting rid of fleets means that they can better share content visually, then it's good. But I'm curious in general about your thoughts on companies canceling products or services. My personal thoughts on this one in particular is I think that it is good for a company to swallow its pride and kill its darlings, as it were. And it doesn't seem like Fleets was much of a darling, to be honest. But you make something and it doesn't work, get rid of it and be okay with that. And I think that when it comes to something like this, where no one has built their existence on it, no one has, created their whole, you're doing less harm by getting rid of this and, focusing your efforts elsewhere. You can't say the same, like, if Google decided that YouTube wasn't profitable for it and they killed YouTube, there's a lot of conversation to be had because a lot of people would be out of work and out of, you know what I mean? So that's a whole different thing. But in this case, I think that it was a good decision for the company to do this. And I don't fault them for iterating in public because it's not something they do a lot. And it's not like you mentioned earlier, Google, where it seems like you can't ever count on something that Google makes. Right. This platform isn't going to make it so that I can't communicate with my family, which is what happens when Google cancels every single messaging service they ever have ever. So it's different in that way. But I'm curious, your take on Twitter canceling this, if you think that's a good move, and kind of your thoughts on companies canceling things when they feel they're not working out.
Because this was done right now, I think it was a good move. If this was done 2 years from now and it was still having the same type of performance or lack of performance and engagement from the user base, and they say cancel it, that's pretty dumb because you just wasted a lot of money over those 2 years. I appreciate the fact that they jumped on this early, looked at the analytics and said, you know what, this thing just isn't flying, so let's just go ahead and just cut our losses and move on. A lot of great businesses do that. That's the best way to go, just to go ahead and cut your losses and go ahead and move on to the next big thing. Far as the sharing visuals on Twitter, I think this is growing now because of what Instagram has done recently with this algorithm, and far as it's pushing more video content versus photos and so forth. Twitter is starting to grow in the photography community. I get so many notifications about photography in Twitter now that I never got, and it's beautiful work that I wouldn't really see on Instagram anymore because Instagram is too busy serving up these weird, quirky videos that tend to be loved by everybody, but I'm just, stop showing me this mindless 20 seconds of you doing nothing. I want to be stimulated visually, and those videos don't do it. But Twitter seems to now have pulled a lot of those photographers from Instagram and getting them to share more there, and it's looking really good. I don't see all of the artifacting and stuff that I would see on Instagram with my images. It got to the point with Instagram, I had to figure out what the exact quality it is when I do my export, because I have a preset in Lightroom that says Instagram.
Gotcha. And so that you do the right size and resolution.
It's got the proper resolution and it's got the right quality, because if I do anything more than that quality, I see artifacts.
It triggers the compression of Instagram, and then Instagram crushes it. Yeah.
And it looks so bad. The edges are all jagged and stuff, and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
But I get why they have to do that, because it's
a
all about
huge
profit
platform.
for them.
Yeah, it's a huge platform, and that's a lot of photos to be stored.
A lot of photos.
Well, folks can continue to check out Fleets until August 3rd. The Verge says that on August 3rd, instead of seeing Fleets at the top of the feed, you'll start to see Active Spaces, which is Twitter's communication platform that's a lot like some of those other audio chat room applications that are out there. So until then, I guess, send out a Fleet if you want to and check it out. But it is definitely going away. All right. Up next, we've got Ant's story of the week. Netflix is getting into some other kind of streaming, it seems. Ant, tell us about your story of the week.
Yeah, so Netflix, that little company that started out by sending DVDs in the United States Postal Service, the snail mail, and next thing you know, they said, hey, we can put this stuff online. And now you don't see the DVDs anymore, and now you see more online. Now you see them writing checks to people like Shonda Rhimes for $50 million because they're just really investing in getting more eyeballs on the platform. Well, they decided, you know what, let's go ahead and get into gaming by hiring the former executive from EA, Electronic Arts, and bringing him in as the VP of Gaming Operations, Mr. Mike Verdu, according to this article here on Bloomberg. And the story reads is they're going to add this service, and it's not going to be an additional cost. It'll be something that's already included in your Netflix subscription. But this is just it caught me a little bit off guard because I just don't see Netflix from a gaming perspective. I see Netflix as someone that's all about providing entertainment, whether it's TV shows that are rehashed and reruns, movies the same, but also a studio now.
Wow.
They're now a studio that are creating their own pretty captivating content. I love a lot of their docuseries that they do that are original. Everything just looks good, and it has a great story, and it keeps people coming back, and they keep renewing, and they keep bringing in more and more of the folks from traditional Hollywood to be a part of that. Games just, it just didn't seem right. It just didn't seem like a fit. Now, I know other companies out there like Apple have gaming and things like that on their platform, but that makes sense to me. Apple has Apple TV, Apple has iPads and iPhones where you can just sit and play games. And then I can contrast that with the likes of Google and Google Stadia. Didn't make sense that they got into games to me. And boy, we can see it now because Stadia is about to be like those fleets at Twitter, But I wanted to get your thoughts on this because this is a lot of money that Netflix continues to invest in itself and bet on itself. Yeah. And they have a really good track record thus far, but I'm not so sure about the gaming side of things. But you're one of the Apple world. I clearly am not. I have an iPad that I barely use, but we're not going to go there. You're one of the Apple world. How are you on the Apple ecosystem in the gaming side of things?
Yeah, well, actually, I will answer that question in a second, but I do want to talk about the larger point if I could, because I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff here. So we look at the different companies right now that are doing game streaming. And when I talk about companies, somebody will inevitably reach out and say, there's this company, this company, this company. Talk about the big companies.
Big ones.
You've got Xbox, what is it called? Xbox Cloud Gaming from Microsoft. Yep. You've got Amazon Luna from Amazon, and you have now I'm forgetting what the third one is.
Was it Sony's?
Darn it! Why can't I think of it? And NVIDIA's GeForce Now. Oh yeah. Which are some kind of big players in the space. But within those, think about Amazon. Where they're not a gaming company, but what they are is a backbone of the internet company. Yep. And they are very good at all sorts of content delivery and streaming and things like that. So they realized, we can get into this space, make some money off of it. And I have to tell you, I've been using Amazon Luna. It is solid and it works very well. I play because I've somehow turned into a gamer. It's really weird and I don't understand it.
But who am I sitting next to?
I know.
What the
I don't know me either, but I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla on Amazon Luna on my Mac, and it's been, it's beautiful.
Wow.
And essentially all it is it's streaming video to your device, and the video is interactive because the stuff's happening, away in the cloud.
Right.
And so even though Amazon isn't on its face a gaming company, they pull that off really well. We look at Netflix, who has these incredible algorithms for video compression and who is streaming to more households than, many a media company. And I think that they looked at this and saw this is an easy win for us. That even though gaming is not on the face of it something that they are into, they've already got streaming video down, and that's what video game streaming is.
Okay.
It just adds an extra element of your interaction. And so I think this is going to be an easy win for them. As far as Apple goes, Apple's gaming is not anything like these, and it is very much still to this day a more casual perspective. It's the games that you get in the Apple Arcade subscription. You download them to your device, and in fact, that's part of the yeah, and that's actually part of the benefit that they go for. They say you can play these offline so that you don't need to be connected, and it's it's a privacy consideration there too, where the games aren't constantly paying attention to your activity.
Right.
But in doing so, it attracts a certain type of developer, a certain type of game creator. And so you do get these almost very specific type of games that aren't these, big name AAA studio games. Whereas with these other platforms, Xbox, of course, is going to get Bethesda because it's, Microsoft.
They are who they are.
And you're going to get the standard games that you could play on Xbox. Oh, it was Stadia that I forgot to mention earlier. That's the one that I was thinking of.
They don't really exist.
This is the thing. This is the thing. Even though Stadia lost, I was just talking to Paul Thurrott about this, even though Stadia kind of got rid of some of their own stuff and it seemed like it was going down the drain, what Stadia did do is they've completely and drastically changed their I can't think of the word now.
Kits, they're bringing in Microsoft.
Well, but they're also changing the way that you can make money on the platform.
Oh, that's right. They're doing it. It was from 30% now to 15% for the first 3 million.
For the first 3 million, and then they're also they're doing an affiliate program. So if you have a Stadia Play Now button on your site, you can make like $10 off of each person who subscribes. And then there's a third thing where people who are streaming the games as part of a subscription as opposed to buying the games and streaming them, that will also earn those game manufacturers money as well. And so what I think Google is doing with Stadia is saying, we're not interested in creating games ourselves, but what we can do is make the platform that people use to access the games that they play from Steam or from an Ubisoft Plus subscription or what have you. So we're happy to be the doorway or the portal, so to speak, to get you to those games, but we don't want to worry about making a library ourselves. So while I think they are stepping away from the studio side of things, I do think that Stadia is going to be one of those platforms that lets you access same as Luna.
Right.
Luna is not about creating a bunch of games of their own and is more focused on being a solid platform. And in talking to Paul Thurrott, who's tested all of these, he's with me on saying that Amazon's Luna is one of the most solid because of the brilliant thing that they've done where the Amazon Luna controller, instead of it being a Bluetooth connection to your device or a wired connection to your device, which you can do both of those, so that when you make the controls move, then through your device, it sends those controls to the server and then the server responds and, changes the video in that way. They've done this beautiful thing of making the controller connect to over Wi-Fi so that the controller is sending the signals to the cloud. And so then it is responsive in a way that you don't get if you have to route through the computer, then to the system, then back. Yeah. Those things can both happen at the same time, and so you get a much more responsive
cut in milliseconds
system.
Down.
Precisely, which is important for any kind of, especially I don't have any interest in playing shooters or anything like that, but people who play shooters, they need that millisecond lag to not be there. And so I can see, because of the way that Netflix has figured out how to, on the fly, make subtle adjustments to the video to match whatever internet connection someone has, they may be able to pull this off even better. I think what's going to be interesting.
So maybe not Netflix as a studio?
That's the part, that I'm not sure about. That's the part where I have to go like this, not like this, but like this, and say, we'll see. Because, I'm with you on, I don't know about that, and pouring a bunch of money into that could cost them money. I think that the best thing that these, and of course I'm saying this speaking out of the side of my mouth, I don't know.
No, you're speaking gospel.
Based on what we've seen thus far, these companies that aren't traditionally studios or haven't traditionally had a foot in making games, they've all decided, you know what, maybe we'll leave that studio part and we'll just focus on being a way for people to play games online. Let Steam be the library where you get your games.
Right.
Let Bethesda do it. Let Ubisoft do it. Let those folks who know how to do it take care of that part.
Right.
We're just going to focus on this. At the same time, though, you hire the right people, and then maybe you can pull it off.
You hire the right people, but maybe those people have relationships too that can sort of help
pull in. I mean, if you've got an EA person and you can get the EA library on your platform, then you're already taking a step ahead of some of the others who don't have Electronic Arts as part of their platform. Did
you try the, I think it was on Black Mirror. Did you try that little simulation? I never did try it, but did you?
Yes. And the problem with that, so I don't know how many games you've played or if you've played a lot of video games, but in video games where you're playing along and then you die and then you get restarted at the very beginning instead of being able to kind of restart at the last save point or the last checkpoint. That's a lot how that choose your own adventure system worked. It was very frustrating because you choose the wrong thing and you kind of can't get back to where you were before.
Geez.
So I didn't want to do it. When I had those choose your own adventure books, I just kept my finger, in place on the last part. And I'm like, oh no, I don't like this ending. We're going back. And you got to choose the other adventure.
Some folks would call that cheating.
That is cheating in some cases.
Okay. Just so you know.
And you know what's funny is no one would have known, but I always felt ashamed when I would flip back to the choose your adventure book. I'm like, I know I shouldn't. I'm cheating. But I wanted to see all the possible outcomes, I guess. So I did try that. I don't think that this is going to be anything like that. I think what Netflix is doing here is they've got to figure out a way to translate a controller's inputs into the proper format so that it can, handle that. But they've got that streaming technology down so well that I think they can pull this off, particularly because you'll see that when it comes to game controller input, it is nearly standardized across all platforms.
Yep.
Apple, at its last WWDC conference, released a new controller system where developers can take advantage of a built-in controller UI that's actually part of the system. They don't have to create their own anymore.
Right.
And most controllers now, regardless if you use Sony's PlayStation controller, if you use an Xbox controller, or if you get one of those controllers that connects to an iPhone or an Android device, you've got left button, left trigger, right trigger, A, B, X, Y, the D-pad, and then a left stick and a right stick, and those left stick and right sticks click. And that's the controller standard, no matter what you're using.
That, yeah.
Everybody's got that. So if you can do that, then it becomes so much simpler. You're not having to do much translation of people's inputs, because then I just connect via Bluetooth to my MacBook Pro or whatever, and it knows when I hit the left trigger that that's the left trigger. And then as long as Netflix can go, oh, he's hitting the left trigger, it doesn't matter what controller you're using or what phone you're using. Suddenly my iPhone becomes something that I go to Netflix games and I'm able to play a game on. So, I think that this is going to be really interesting. My one curiosity is what you said about not the thought that they might not be charging more for this.
Right.
This seems like such an easy way to charge more. And a lot of people would go, if they got the right games, a lot of people would go, you know what? Yeah, I'll pay also, $2.99 extra for.
Or maybe this is just a typical Netflix that says, okay, you know what? We're going to keep the prices here, but next year.
In a year, we'll go up.
Everybody's going to go up by 5%
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
There's been a price increase for the last handful of years, but it hasn't been something terribly dramatic. So maybe that's part of their plan. Yeah.
Oh, and I do want to, as Scooter X pointed out in the chat, that is what Paul was saying. Stadia, and Luna are the two that do the Wi-Fi controller to the system, as opposed to the other platforms which either do a local connection or a Bluetooth connection or something like that. So they've nailed it by doing that Wi-Fi connection. It makes for a whole different experience. That's really great.
I just don't believe in Stadia. I had it for a little while. I had a pro account or whatever. They sent me a promo and all of that stuff, and just the performance of it on that Chromecast. I think it's a Chromecast Ultra. It just seemed a little too janky for me. I think with any of the gaming platforms, I don't know about the Chromecast itself, but is it Wi-Fi? It's Wi-Fi, but you can also connect an Ethernet cable.
You can?
To it.
Did you?
I didn't, because I would have to run the cable around the living room and all that. Dude, no.
Right, and that's the thing is that
No.
I will say, I should be clear that these have been solid when I'm Ethernet connected.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the games were fine. They're lower quality, so some of them were fine in using my Wi-Fi 6 router.
Yep.
But to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where you've got these beautiful reflections on the water and all that kind of stuff, you need to be Ethernet connected. But as soon as I was, oh man, what an experience. You just, fall into it. So yeah, you do. I think that all of these, they talk about, Wi-Fi, this sort of wireless experience, and they talk about 5G, and maybe someday, but I think not right now. But again, if anyone could nail it on that point, I mean, Netflix, you can connect with a string and a tin can and watch a Netflix show because they've figured out how to properly do the video so that it does that. And I think that the rest of them often choose to optimize for visual quality over continued gameplay, unless you go in and change the settings.
Right.
And so Netflix, I think, they've never been ashamed to drop that quality in order to continue the stream, because I think that they've seen that people care more about their show just stopping and buffering.
Yeah, buffering is the worst.
Yeah, than just like a brief pause or just a brief change in the visual quality before it kind of resets and gets back to good.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all going to be interesting, and I'm curious with an EA person there how well that's going to work for Netflix. So we'll see.
And they're talking 2022, so this is right around the corner. So,
oh man, don't tell me 2022 is right around the corner.
It is. You are getting older, Mr. Sargent. Just face it, man. Just face it. Well, this has been a lot of fun being back here in the studio on the set and doing Tech News Weekly with you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
This is awesome. So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Now, you can check out Tech News Weekly each and every Thursday here on the network. Just go to twit.tv/TNW and check out all the subscription options there. We're available in whatever podcast app you use. So go ahead and pick yours and give us a nice rating and review.
We should also mention Club TWiT, as it is the way that you can get all of our shows ad-free for $7 a month. Along with every TWiT show with no ads, you also get access to the exclusive TWiT Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, and the members-only Discord server, where we hang out and chat with you, and you get to join the club of really awesome folks who are part of Club TWiT, who are, I mean, there are many a channel. I've got pulled up on the screen back here. There's channels for all of the different shows. Plus, you've got focused channels for different topics. It's really fun. Lots of good stuff happening there. twit.tv/clubtwit to check that out. If you would like to tweet at me for whatever reason or follow me on social media, I'm at Mikah Sargent on many a social place, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Check out Smart Tech Today later today, which I do with Matthew Casanelli if my voice doesn't give out before then. And also iOS Today tomorrow with Rosemary Orchard. You can also check out the shows I did earlier this week, including Security Now with Steve Gibson and Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Things will return to normal soon, so you'll be seeing less of me. Don't worry. But until then, thanks for checking out the shows. Aunt Pruitt, where can folks find you? And of course, where do they follow you on social media?
Well, I can't be found on how did you spell
Chihuahua.coffee.
Oh, wow. I can't be found there. I'm on Twitter, ant_Pruitt, and I'm also on Instagram, but just don't send me a fleet because apparently that's not going to work anytime soon. But yeah, check out my show, Hands On Photography. It's twit.tv/hop, twit.tv/HOP, and check out all of the nice, fun tutorials and photography talk over there each and every Thursday.
Beautiful. Of course, we have to thank our wonderful team here in the studio. John Ashley, who's got his fingers on all those different buttons. We've got Slanina here hanging out and making sure everything's going as planned.
And Mr. Burke.
Of course, Burke, who's slinking around also helping
there he
out
is. He's hanging in the rafters.
Oh, hi, Burke. Careful. Thank you all, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tech News Weekly. We appreciate it, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.
Do the fist.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. How fun. We get to do that again.
Yes, things are back to normal now.
Nice.
You know what's fun? Android. You know what's even more fun, though? All about Android. That's my show, Jason Howell, along with my co-hosts Ron Richards, Florence Ion, and we welcome guests on each and every week from throughout the Android ecosystem, developers, Googlers, journalists, people who are all geeked out about the Android operating system. We tell you everything you need to know. twit.tv/AAA every Tuesday. We'll see you there.